Good morning and welcome to SoS2021 2021. I'm Aisha Sinclair, the host for the opening session of our Partnership Week for Marine Plastic Pollution Prevention. We have participants from all around the region, including Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, Singapore, the People's Republic of China, the Republic of Korea, and other parts of the world. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Sea of Solutions is an annually occurring partnership event towards solving plastic pollution at source, convened by the United Nations Environment Programme and the coordinating body on the seas of East Asia through the SEA Circular project supported by the government of Sweden. This year's event is co-hosted by the government of Malaysia through the Ministry of Environment and Water. Seas of Solution brings together delegates from hundreds of delegates from almost 70 countries, comprising of government and business leaders, academia, scientists, innovators, conservationists, youth leaders, and community groups to discuss solutions to marine litter and plastic pollution prevention. This year's theme calls upon plastic value chain stakeholders to engage and unite in accelerating solutions to reduce plastic waste by exploring policies, partnerships, innovations, and financing that help address present challenges and mitigate the potential impacts of future disruptive events. Now, we have seen in the past year how the COVID-19 pandemic has had an immense impact on the economic, social, and environmental health. As the world continues to battle against an invisible enemy, a more obvious and potentially longer-lasting threat emerges with the rise of single-use plastic waste, which finds its way into our environment. Solutions exist, but how can we accelerate these to ensure a less plastic waste future? Now, we want you to be part of the conversation and also part of the solution too. So let's start off today's program with the Sea of Solutions 2021 official opening video. That is true. We all have a role to play in this. Right now, I'd like to bring to you a video message from Ms. Susan Gardner, the Director of Ecosystems Division of the United Nations Environment Programme.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, we stand at a pivotal moment. Climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, rampant pollution, plastics are wrapped up in all of them. And this pervasive problem has permeated our world from mountains to ocean trenches. We've unleashed a plastic plague upon nature, and much of this detritus ends up in our long-suffering ocean. You've no doubt heard that by 2040, the volume of plastic flowing into ocean could triple, possibly hitting 37 million metric tons per year. And this is also an economic issue, reducing marine ecosystem services by billions of dollars per year. The life cycle greenhouse gas emissions of plastics hit 1.7 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalents in 2015. And greenhouse gas emissions from production, recycling, and incineration of plastics could account for 19% of the Paris Agreement's total allowable emissions in 2040 in order to stay within the 1.5 degrees Celsius. In recent words of our Secretary General at COP26, he said, "Our addiction to fossil fuels is pushing humanity to the brink. We face a stark choice. Either we stop it or it stops us." The convenient benefits of plastics are obvious, even more so now during a global pandemic, but we shouldn't imagine that this makes plastics absolutely indispensable. To arrive at true value, those benefits need to be offset against the immense damage that plastic is doing to nature. And neither should we imagine that alternative, environmentally friendly materials are not available, or that a true circular economy for plastic is unattainable. Today, we're here to discuss solutions. Concerted, urgent efforts are needed globally to alter the situation and build forward both bluer and greener from COVID. There is indeed a sea of solutions. Our ambition must be toward system-wide change and solutions across the entire plastic value chain, best addressed by rethinking how we make, use, dispose of plastics, taking into account their full life cycle. And this moment calls for ambitious, bold, and measurable actions by governments, civil society, and private sector at all levels. This moment really calls for all hands on deck. First, we significantly reduce the production of virgin plastics, particularly single-use plastic products. As the world transitions to clean energy, we need to see the leadership of oil and gas sector and their petrochemical partners on plastic production. A total of 99% of feedstock for plastic production is fossil fuel based, which accounts for approximately 8 to 9% of global oil and gas consumption. But we can't do this without full engagement of industry and finance. Just 20 companies produce half of all single-use plastic products that are thrown away, and around 60% of these have commercial finance that coming just from 20 banks. If these entities lean in on solutions and come to the table, we can make rapid progress. And second, we look at multiple solutions across the life cycle and source to sea and safe circularity. To reduce virgin plastic use, we need to both reduce the amount we use as well as keep plastics circulating in the economy and out of our terrestrial ecosystems, our waterways, and our oceans. This means improving the design of products and services to restrict hazardous chemicals in products, enhance their reuse, ensure recycling when they reach the end of their life. A comprehensive circular economy approach could reduce the global annual volumes of plastics entering our oceans by over 80% over the next 20 years. Imagine that, 80%. It would reduce costs to governments by $70 billion between 2021 and 2040. It would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 25%, and it could create 700,000 net additional jobs, mainly in the global south. Third, we have to invest in waste management systems. Less than 10% of plastics that's been generated has been recycled, and this means the rest lives on, directly or indirectly, in our environment. It's one garbage truck per minute that goes into our oceans. 12% is incinerated into our atmosphere. Now, improving solid waste management across the globe will make a huge difference to plastic pollution and human health. If we stop littering, burning, and dumping plastic waste, the emissions and air pollution can truly be avoided. Fourth, we need national action. As nations consider the way forward, near-term action plans at national level remain crucial. This means legislation on waste production, public procurement, and information to consumers. It also means integrating action on plastic across the economy through physical measures on production of content, manufacturing, trade, transportation, waste management, and so on. It also means national source inventories, capacity building, and promoting campaigns to engage citizens in solving this challenge. Friends, these are some areas in which we can act together to reduce all forms of plastic discharge into the environment. But this action can be boosted by a comprehensive, inclusive global approach. UNEP stands with member states as they work on a joined-up approach to tackle marine litter and plastic pollution at our next UN Environment Assembly 5.2 that's themed Strengthening Actions for Nature to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. It's an opportunity to take decisive action by establishing a mechanism to close the gaps in existing instruments and tackle the problem across the entire value chain. Through the COP-C and its Regional Action Plan on Marine Litter, UNEP stands ready to assist member states in addressing marine litter and plastic pollution on an integrated and coordinated basis. If we get it right on plastic pollution, we not only clean up our seas, we help to solve the triple planetary crises. We protect our air, our land, and our water. We protect our health and the health of the planet, ensuring our perpetuity as a species for generation to come. I look forward to hearing the outcomes of this important event, and I wish you all the best in your discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gardner. Pollution is indeed one of the greatest threats that the world is faced with, but we now have the tools and information to solve this crisis at different levels. Government leadership will be crucial in collaboration with other sectors. Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Tuan Ibrahim Tuan Man, Minister of Environment and Water, Malaysia, will now give his opening remarks.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera semua. Mr. Susan Gardner, Director Ecosystem Division, United Nations Environment Programme, Mr. Excellencies John Estrom Grundel, Ambassador to Thailand, Kingdom of Sweden, Mr. Deccan Sering, Regional Director of Asia and Pacific, United Nations Environment Programme, tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang saya hormati sekalian. Alhamdulillah, pertama-tama kita panjatkan syukur pada Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, dan pada hari yang mulia ini dapat sama-sama kita berada dalam satu majlis yang mudah-mudahan diberkati Allah Taala. Selawat dan salam ke atas junjungan besar kita Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ahli keluarga baginda dan para sahabat radhiyallahu anhum. Pertama, saya merakamkan ucapan setinggi-tinggi tahniah kepada pihak penganjur dan jutaan terima kasih diucapkan kerana sudi menjemput saya merasmikan program SoS2021 yang amat bermanfaat ini, insya-Allah. Semoga program berjalan lancar sehingga penghujungnya. Tidak lupakan kepada para hadirin yang turut menjayakan program dan mengharapkan percambahan idea dan perkongsian pengalaman dalam kalangan para peserta agar objektif program dapat kita capai. Mudah-mudahan tekad kita untuk melestarikan sumber lautan direalisasikan sehingga beroleh kejayaan, insya-Allah. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang hormat sekalian, memulakan bicara saya ingin menarik perhatian kita semua kepada suatu firman Allah Ta'ala dalam surah Al-Fatir ayat ke-12. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Wa ma yastawil bahrani hadza 'azbun furatun sa'ighun sharabuhu wa hadza milhun ujaj wa min kulli ta'kuluna lahman tariyya wa tastakhrijuna hilyatan talbasunaha wa taral fulka fiha mawakhir litabtagu min fadlihi wa la'allakum tashkurun. Maksudnya, dan tidaklah sama keadaan dua laut, satu tawar memuaskan dahaga sesuai diminum, manakala satu lagi masin dan pahit. Semuanya kamu boleh makan daging yang lembut dan kamu boleh keluarkan daripada lautan itu menjadi perhiasan untuk dipakai, dan kamu melihat kapal yang berlayar membelah lautan. Kamu boleh mencari nikmat rezeki dan semoga kamu bersyukur kepada Allah. Firman Allah Ta'ala itu menggambarkan peri pentingnya ekosistem lautan kepada manusia. Tiada sesuatu yang diciptakan oleh Allah sia-sia. Khazanah alam yang bernilai ini wajar dipelihara daripada kerakusan dan sikap tamak dan tidak bertanggungjawab manusia. Malaysia mempunyai garis pesisir pantai sepanjang 4,809 km. Ekosistem lautan merupakan salah satu sumber penjanaan ekonomi yang amat penting bagi negara, seperti industri perikanan, pelombongan, minyak dan gas, perkhidmatan pelabuhan, pelancongan dan rekreasi marin. Justru usaha untuk melestarikan sumber lautan adalah salah satu cabaran yang sangat besar. Amanah ini merentas agensi dan menuntut semua pemegang taruh menggalasnya secara bersepadu. Kita sangat menghargai setiap peranan yang dimainkan kerana berkongsi inspirasi yang sama. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan sekalian, pengurusan marin semakin mencabar. Sumber lautan dan ekosistem marin sangat merosot. Pencemaran lautan sangat membimbangkan kita semua. Mutakhir ini, isu sisa plastik marin mendapat liputan daripada semua pihak dan pelbagai wacana serantau dan antarabangsa diadakan. Mendepani cabaran kritikal ini, Malaysia dengan kerjasama United Nations Environment Programme atau UNEP dan the Coordinating Body on the Seas and East Asia atau COPC berganding bahu untuk menganjurkan program SoS2021 pada tahun ini. Tahniah saya ucapkan. Objektif utama penganjuran program ini ialah untuk menghimpunkan semua pemegang taruh bagi membincangkan langkah-langkah konstruktif bagi menangani sisa plastik, khususnya sisa plastik marin secara efektif, selari dengan tema yang dipilih, iaitu Accelerating Solution to Reduce Plastic Waste. Meskipun orientasi program ini terpaksa diubah suai dan dianjurkan secara atas talian, diharapkan output perbincangan itu nanti tetap konsisten bagi mencapai semua objektif yang telah digariskan. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan sekalian, salah satu fokus matlamat pembangunan mampan ialah kelestarian sumber lautan dan menangani pencemaran marin seperti lambakan plastik marin, ancaman mikroplastik terhadap survival kehidupan akuatik, dan kini pelbagai langkah solusi telah dan akan diambil, termasuk penggubalan satu perjanjian global khas untuk mengenai isu plastik marin ini. Di Malaysia, kita menggagaskan Pelan Hala 7 ke arah sifar plastik sekali guna 2018 hingga 2030. Pelan ini akan dilaksanakan berpandukan rangka kerja pengurusan plastik 2021 hingga 2030 yang memfokuskan kepada pelaksanaan Extended Producer Responsibility dan konsep Circularity untuk kita mengurangkan sisa plastik di sepanjang rantaian nilai yang ada. Kita optimis aplikasi konsep ekonomi kitaran adalah game changer sebagai pemangkin kepada kelestarian pengurusan plastik dan penjanaan sumber ekonomi baru bagi negara. Potensi kita semula plastik adalah sekitar 1.3 bilion dolar setahun berdasarkan market study for Malaysia, plastic circularity opportunities and barriers yang telah disediakan oleh World Bank. Akhir kata, sekali lagi saya ingin merakamkan ucapan tahniah dan penghargaan kepada semua pihak yang menjayakan program ini. Semoga program ini berkati oleh Allah Subhanahu wa taala. Dengan lafaz bismillahirrahmanirrahim, saya merasmikan program SoS2021 pada kali ini. Siru ala barakatillah. Terima kasih semua pihak. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera.
Thank you very much, Datuk Sri Tuan Ibrahim. We are truly delighted, especially myself being a Malaysian, to learn about these initiatives and engagements. It is undeniable that the plastic crisis is affecting our lives, our livelihoods, and our relationship with nature. It has exacerbated social, economic, and environmental threats for which we need urgent action. Partnerships and sharing of best practices is key. Therefore, please join me in welcoming His Excellency Jon Ostrom Grandal, Swedish Ambassador to Thailand, to offer his opening remarks.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning from Bangkok. I'm honored to be invited and grateful for this opportunity to deliver this opening speech on behalf of the Swedish government. This is the third Sea of Solutions, an important annual event where a broad range of stakeholders come together towards tackling plastic pollution. As mentioned by dear Aisha, our MC today, Sea of Solutions is part of the regional marine litter program Sea Circular, financed by Sweden and implemented by the coordinating body on the seas of East Asia, COPSEA, and the United Nations Environment Programme, or UNEP. Let me extend a warm thank you to the government of Malaysia for co-hosting this year's Sea of Solutions together with UNEP and COPSEA. So, let us be clear on one thing. It's a fact that cannot be denied. We are in the middle of a plastics crisis. We are producing over 380 million tons of plastic every year, where up to 50% is for single-use purposes. Less than 9% of all plastics globally gets recycled. Over the last 10 years, we have produced more plastic than during the whole of the last century. 10 million tons of plastics ends up in our oceans every year, which equals more than a garbage truck load every minute. The plastics crisis relates to a broad range of human rights, including the rights to life, the highest attainable standard of health, a healthy environment, housing, water and sanitation, adequate food, equality and non-discrimination, as well as rights to information, participation and effective remedy, all of which are protected under international law. The plastics crisis has disproportionate impacts on groups at heightened risk of human rights violations, such as workers, indigenous peoples, coastal communities, and people living in poverty. Children and women in these groups face an even greater risk. Not only present but future generations will be affected if the plastics crisis is not reversed. The present situation cannot stand. We must seize opportunities for greener and sustainable production, consumption, and waste management. Solutions must include, and I underline this, it must include a human rights-based approach. We are in this together, and it's only together we can solve it. Collaboration, cooperation, and coordination with a whole of government and whole of society approach is key if we are to make progress. It means that governments, public and private sectors, and legislation need to come together. As a lawyer by training, I believe the latter has a special role to play. My personal view is that it's high time to ban certain single-use plastic products. I acknowledge the leadership and commitment by the countries in this region and the Asean leadership, both at national and international level. I would like to share 3 examples of actions from my own country, Sweden, where we have put great effort into reducing household and industrial plastic waste and microplastics. Firstly, Sweden has invested greatly into recycling schemes. A huge investment is now being done to create the largest and most modern plastic recycling plant in the world. It is called Site Zero and will be completed in 2023. The facility will be able to recycle all plastic packaging from Swedish households and make plastics circular, completely without any CO2 emissions. Thanks to cutting-edge technology, it will be possible to recycle practically all types of plastics. Any small parts of plastic that remain after the sorting process are separated to be sent to chemical recycling or to become new products. I'm pleased to announce that the CEO of Swedish Plastic Recycling, Mr. Philipson, and responsible for Site Zero, is a panelist in session 2 later today. Secondly, in 2018, Sweden banned the use of microplastics in cosmetic products, such as toothpaste and soaps. The microplastics in cosmetics are not at all necessary and can be substituted with materials that are biodegradable. This is of great importance to the quality of our water. Even though this is waste we do not see, it makes a lot of harm both to our health and to the health of our ecosystems. The third example is that my government has recently adopted a national strategy and action plan for a circular economy that sets out the direction and ambition for a long-term and sustainable transition of Swedish society. The vision is a society in which resources are used efficiently in non-toxic circular flows, replacing virgin materials. It is a national effort aiming at having the circular economy as a driving force for the business sector and other actors through measures to promote innovation and circular business models. Getting the private sector on board is key for transitioning to a sustainable society. Companies that do business responsibly and find opportunities to innovate around sustainability will inevitably be the business leaders of tomorrow, if not already. It is important to acknowledge stakeholders in the whole plastic value chain and their key role in addressing plastic waste, both upstream to avoid the use of plastic and downstream through sorting and recycling. Our development cooperation shall support efforts towards the transition to a circular and bio-based economy with non-toxic cycles. For example, the Swedish Development Cooperation Strategy for Bangladesh includes a specific focus on the transition to a circular economy and a sustainable textile production with a limited use of water and hazardous substances. On a global level, Sweden firmly believes that a global agreement on plastics is the most effective and comprehensive global response to combat marine plastic litter and microplastics. It is therefore imperative that a decision is taken at the second part of the 5th United Nations Environment Assembly in February 2022 to establish an intergovernmental negotiation committee for such an agreement. Thank you for listening, and once again, thank you to the government of Malaysia, to COBSI and to UNEP for organizing this important event that I hope, or I'm sure, I'm confident that it will be a great success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ostrom Grondal, for your message. It's inspiring to hear the actions that have been taken by Sweden, what's currently being done, and also the future plans. I know a lot can be learned from these efforts, and definitely a whole of society approach is indeed crucial, and it's one that, of course, that is reflected in today's gathering. So give us further insights into the regional context and help us further understand our role as a region in combating plastic pollution, I'd like to kindly invite Ms. Dechin Sering, Regional Director of the United Nations Environment Programme in Asia and the Pacific, to give a message. Over to you, Ms. Sering.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Honorable Dato Sri Tun Ibrahim bin Tun Man, Minister of Environment and Water of Malaysia, Honorable Jon Astrom Grondal, Ambassador of Sweden to Thailand, Honorable Dato Lim Jok Hoi, Secretary General of ASEAN, Ms. Susan Gardner, Director, Ecosystem Division, United Nations Environment Programme. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all those tuning in across the region and around the globe, a very good morning. On behalf of the United Nations Environment Programme, it is an honor to welcome you to this year's edition of the Sea of Solutions event under the theme of Accelerating Solutions to Address Plastic Waste. Convened virtually and hosted by the Government of Malaysia, to which we are extremely grateful, this event comes at a critical time. Our region, a place which many of us here today call home, is also home to half of the world's global plastics production and subsequently contribute to the largest pileup of marine plastic waste. Plastic is critical for the economy. At the same time, plastic waste is a threat to the health of our people, environment, and economies. Originating from land based sources, plastic waste finds its way into the marine environment, devastating entire ecosystems from abyssal trenches to beautiful coral reefs and fish population, eventually accumulating into our food. Our region has become a major hotspot of plastic leakage, so much so that our rivers are responsible for 86% of the total global input of marine litter. In 2016, the world generated about 240 million tons of plastic waste, to 12% of all solid waste, and our region was responsible for 23% of it. Not to mention, COVID 19 reverted gains that we made in addressing plastic waste, further emphasizing the need to focus from pollution to solutions. Sea of Solutions provides a platform that brings together different partners in the plastic value chain, creating voices of acceleration and communicating the aspiration and commitment to address plastic waste by all parties involved, strengthening links to robust policy making. The sixth thematic session of this year's Sea of Solutions speak to a set of integrated solutions from lifestyle and behavioral changes to innovative approaches using digital technologies, public private partnerships at city level, enabling extended producer responsibilities and circularity to sustainable financing. Circularity looks at both upstream and downstream processes. On the one hand, it extends as much as possible the use of plastics in the value chain. On the other, it avoids using plastic that have no other option but becoming waste. We need concrete and sustainable actions to reduce mismanagement global plastic waste. We all have a role to play curbing plastic waste, shared responsibility, and every stakeholder along the plastic value chain can and must explore what they can do to shift how we produce and dispose of plastic. Government policies, regulations, cross border cooperation require data and sound evidence in order to be effective. At the same time, successful enforcement will necessitate outreach and education campaigns to increase consumer awareness, catalyzing a transition towards less plastic waste markets and lifestyles. Local action through community engagement and pioneering work of civil society should be leveraged for scaling and ensuring safe, fair, and sustainable livelihoods. And finally, businesses must utilize innovative techniques, latest technologies, and increase investments to facilitate a transition towards circular economies that will prevent production of unnecessary plastics and keep existing ones within the economy and out of the environment. Over the next 3 days, we will learn from each other, identify best practices as well as gaps that will require support and open up opportunities for collaboration. Solutions to address plastic are available within our region. Our region has shown leadership and commitment to address plastic waste. To this end, I would like to commend the ASEAN for its leadership in addressing this challenge. I would also like to commend the government of Malaysia, our host this year, and each and every ASEAN member state for their commitment to this issue. Two guiding strategic documents are a blueprint to transition away from the plastic pandemic: the Regional Action Plan on Marine Litter Management, RAP Mali, and the ASEAN Marine Debris Strategy that was launched earlier this year. Let us take advantage of these opportunities, and I kindly urge each and every one to participate in accelerating solutions to reduce plastic waste. I would also like to acknowledge and thank all our distinguished speakers and moderators for their commitment and valuable time and for sharing their expertise and enriching this program. Special thank you to my UN colleagues and colleagues from the Multilateral Environmental Agreements, I would also like to thank the government of Sweden for the funding support to the Sea Circular project for less plastic wasted in the Southeast Asia region that has opened the opportunity to this great platform for addressing plastic pollution in the region for 3 consecutive years. I also want to congratulate Malaysia as co-host of this event, and I look forward to Malaysia's next agenda on marine litter policy and action plans. Without commitment, we will never start, but more importantly, without consistency, we will never finish our collective task to turn the tide on plastic waste. Once again, I thank you for being here. I wish you all a very fruitful discussion and collaboration amidst a sea of solutions to combat plastic pollution. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sering. Our region, our home, is indeed a critical role to play. Proven and effective solutions do exist, and by working together, we can prevent and drastically reduce plastic pollution. To also highlight the region's leadership, let us hear from His Excellency Datuk Lim Jock Hui, Secretary General, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, for the keynote address.
Excellency Datuk Sri Tuan Ibrahim bin Tuan Man, Minister of Environment and Waters of Malaysia, Excellency John Astrom Grandel, Ambassador of Sweden to Thailand, Ms. Susan Gardner, Director of Ecosystem Division of United Nations Environment Programme, Ms. Dechen Tesing, Regional Directors of United Nations Environment Programme in Asia and the Pacific, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am pleased to join you today at the Sea of Solution 2021. I appreciate the Government of Malaysia, particularly the Ministry of Environment of Water, the United Nations Environment Programme, and the coordinating body on the Sea of East Asia for co-organizing this significant and timely discussion. My appreciation also goes to the government of Sweden, who made this event possible through the Sea Circular project. I am pleased to note that today's event marks an important milestone for the government of Malaysia, with the launch of Malaysian National Marine Litters Policy and Circular Economy Roadmap. The roadmap demonstrates Malaysia's strong commitment to turn the tide in the battles against marine debris and accelerate its works towards circular economy. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, despite the unprecedented impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the region has demonstrated remarkable strength and resilience. The adoption of the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework and its implementation plan last year reaffirms the region's commitment towards a more sustainable and resilient future as part of a green recovery process. On this note, ASEAN Leaders' Declaration on the Blue Economy that was recently endorsed at the 38th ASEAN Summit in October 2021 acknowledges oceans and seas as key drivers of economic growth and innovation. The oceans, however, are under immense threat, especially due to marine debris, plastic pollution. Recent studies suggest that economic costs of marine debris, including tourism, fishing, and shipping, is estimated to around 10.8 billion US for countries in the APEC region. The ongoing COVID-19 further magnified the existing threat of plastic in our seas. If we do not institute long-term solution and action urgently, the amount of plastic entry into marine environment is set to increase 10 times by 2025. In this regard, it is timely for SoS2021 to bring together key players and stakeholders to develop innovative strategies and effective solutions to mitigate the potential impact of marine plastic pollution in the region. I trust that the outcome of this event will provide valuable insights to complement the implementation of the ASEAN Regional Action Plan on combating marine debris in ASEAN member states that was launched last May. This regional action plan outlines strategic actions set to be implemented in the next 5 years to reduce waste, enhance collection, and minimize leakages, as well as create value for waste reuse. At this juncture, allow me to share some perspective on the theme Accelerating Solution to Reduce Plastic Waste and Relevant Initiative in ASEAN. First, I wish to highlight the importance of raising public awareness and transforming consumer behavior. These have become more important than ever as the pandemic triggered an unprecedented change in consumption habits. With an increase in the use of plastic for personal protective equipment and delivery services, it is estimated that 2020 marked a 30% increase in plastic waste. ASEAN's countries have initiated efforts to educate consumer and businesses to participate in the reduction of single-use plastic through activities such as waste segregation, recycling, and coastal cleanups. However, there are still opportunities to step up our efforts to improve the public awareness and understanding, which can enable meaningful change in consumer behavior. I trust that our discussion will stimulate advocacy strategies and initiatives to inspire more eco-friendly behavior and lifestyle beyond the pandemic. Second, plastic and plastic-derived products represent a significant trade sector of ASEAN, with US $41.65 billion in export and US $49.28 billion in import annually. Plastic packaging, however, accounts for the largest portion of packaging waste. Poor product design, as well as lack of standards and adequate infrastructure, among the main causes of low recycling rates and continued leakage to the ocean. In recent years, new innovation in design, collection scheme, infrastructure, and product for recovered waste have delivered positive impact and offer promising long-term solution. At the regional level, ASEAN has been supporting innovative solutions through research and knowledge development as part of our cooperation with partners on 3R and local capacity building project. To build upon this progress, there is a need to coordinate such initiatives at the regional level to enhance network and database for easier access to information and innovation around the region, as well as attract investment for innovation. The third focus area is the critical role of cities to effectively manage waste and eliminate leakage. Cities occupy only 3% of the world's land but consume 75% of natural resources, producing 50% of all waste. The UNEP estimate that the municipal solid waste generation in ASEAN reaches 1.14 kilogram per capita per day. With the increasingly rate of urbanization in the region, managing solid waste will likely become increasingly difficult as the waste volume generated in ASEAN is expected to increase by approximately 150% from 1995 level by 2025. The ASEAN Sustainable Urbanization Strategies provided cities with a framework and toolkits to advance sustainable urbanization. Capacity building initiative and incentive are also implemented, such as the ASEAN Environmentally Sustainable City Award programs to inspire more cities to embrace greener policy and programs. I look forward to the insights and ideas in this topic, especially on how we can further empower cities as local champions to minimize the use of plastic and to promote waste to resource initiative. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, involving all stakeholders along the value chain to reduce plastic pollution and enhance resource efficiency is a must. The private sector, in particular, has been demonstrating their commitment and capability to address these mounting challenges. I am encouraged by the fact that more and more leading companies act on extended producer responsibility through producer responsible organization. This plastic recycling organization plays a critical role in a conduit to connect value chain actors, close infrastructure gap, connect business with the informal sector, and enable efficient waste solution collection for recycling. I hope that the perspective from the PRO, their progress and achievement challenges will shed light for collaboration to advance their work. Our fights against marine debris will not be complete without parallel efforts to transition towards circular economy in a broader context. I am pleased to share that ASEAN recently adopted the framework of circular economy for the ASEAN Economic Community to guide the regions towards the adoption of a sustainable economic model which maximizes the value of resources and minimizes waste. Moving forward, mainstreaming circular economy principle into ASEAN's development agenda and vision beyond 2025 is high in our priorities. Given the urgency of the situation, the important question to ask is, how can we accelerate the circular economy transition in the region? The approach we takes requires a radical rethinking on all points of the value chain, innovative business models for plastic circularity, and to discuss action to move away from a business as usual approach. Last but not least, we must highlight the importance of sustainable financing. To advance this, it is necessary to boost the value of waste materials and minimize risk to invest in circular innovation. Mobilizing investment through both public and private mechanisms is important to transform market and societies. This could include increasing access to a large-scale grant and loan by multilateral development banks or mobilizing private sector incubators for innovative business model. Plastic credit scheme to catalyze change may also be explored together with microfinance mechanism for community-based action. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the success of our efforts will depend on collective and coordinated action and partnership. Realizing this would show ASEAN's spirit in working for the people through the focus of ASEAN chairmanship this year on We Care, We Prepare, We Prosper, as well as next year's ASEAN ACT Addressing Challenges together. I look forward to your continuing commitment and support in our works towards cleaner sea. Through our shared vision and joint effort, I'm confident that we can build stronger partnership for cleaner and healthier oceans. So I thank you.
Our sincere thanks to His Excellency Datuk Lim for his message. Now, we have reached the second part of the program, which is the soft launch of Malaysia's National Marine Litter Policy and Action Plan 2021-2030. The soft launch is a move forward for Malaysia in tackling marine litter and plastic pollution. The policy is expected to be adopted by the country this year. We'd now like to present to you a video montage on the soft launch and the video pledges.
I pledge that CASA will work strategically with relevant ministries, state governments, universities, businesses and respective industries, as well as the community and NGOs to implement the national policy and action plan on marine litter, with of course a focus on putting pragmatic solutions into concrete actions. I hope all of you will join us in this endeavor.
Kami, warga KASA, berikrar mengelakkan penggunaan plastik sekali guna. Kami juga akan mempromosikan inisiatif memerangi pencemaran plastik marine. Alam sekitar, tanggungjawab bersama.
The Malaysian Recycling Alliance, or MARIA for short, pledges to combat marine litter through our voluntary extended producer responsibility, EPR, for post-consumer packaging waste in Malaysia. We hope to gather like-minded industry players to come together to enhance collection, promote the use of recycled and renewable materials, as well as minimizing post-consumer packaging leakage into the environment. We believe that segregation at source is critical for the successful implementation of an EPR scheme in Malaysia. Come and join us in this journey. Thank you.
My name is Julian Hyde, and I am the General Manager of Reef Check Malaysia. Our pledge is that by 2024, Reef Check Malaysia will reduce the release of plastic waste into the sea at 3 island destinations by increasing plastic recycling by 50% from current baseline. This will be achieved through improving waste management in collaboration with both local stakeholders, islanders and tourism operators, and relevant government agencies.
Hi guys, apa kabar? Nama saya Dane, aka Orang Putih Kita. Dan saya ingin ceritakan sikit tentang Clean Seas Campaign. Memang bukan rahsia bahawa laut kita makin penuh dengan sampah plastik dan mikroplastik. Jadi kita semua harus bekerjasama untuk cari penyelesaian. Saya sendiri berjanji untuk sokong Clean Seas Campaign dengan teruskan bagi kesedaran dan pendidikan dengan cara-cara kita boleh kurangkan atau kitar semula plastik, serta untuk sokong apa-apa program yang selaras dengan itu inisiatif. Dan saya menjemput kamu semua untuk join saya dengan sokong ini campaign. Kita juga bani.
I'm Ong Kim Sui and I'm the coach of Sabah Football Club. I urge everyone to support Malaysia initiative to tackle marine plastic pollution. Let's do every bit that we can to reduce plastic waste. Please recycle plastic bottles and packaging if you can, and dispose your waste responsibly so that they do not end up in our beautiful ocean. Together, we can save our ocean and marine life.
Hi guys, I'm Gardner, national badminton player. We are facing an uphill challenge of ending plastic waste in the ocean. Plastic pollution destroys marine life and it affects us by entering human food chain through seafood that we consume. So, I call upon all Malaysians to support our fight against plastic pollution. We can remedy the situation if we work together for a cleaner ocean. Stop using single-use plastic. Start recycling and do what you can to support this cause. Every little action counts. Let's do our part and free the ocean of plastic.
Hai, saya Briaya. Kepada rakyat Malaysia tercinta, marilah kita kurangkan penggunaan plastik sekali guna. Lupuskan bahan plastik secara berkhidmat dan selamatkan lautan kita.
Hai semua, saya Tanah Badan Nada Raja, pemain bola sepak bagi pasukan Sabah FC. Saya ingin mengajak semua rakyat Malaysia untuk sama-sama menyokong usaha kerajaan dalam menangani pencemaran plastik di lautan dan pantai negara. Marilah kita kekalkan keindahan dan kebersihan lautan negara demi masa depan generasi akan datang. Kita pasti boleh.
Warm greetings everyone, my name is Jacqueline Chang and I am the official ambassador to the Circular Economy Institute. I pledge to support the Clean Seas campaign by fulfilling the Institute's mission together with my other peer leaders who are promoting circularity in all sectors and the highest standards of practice in the circular economy field.
To tell us more about this very timely and relevant policy and action plan, I'd like to call upon Ms. Cheryl Rita Kaur, Head of Centre for Coastal and Maritime and Marine Environment of the Maritime Institute of Malaysia. Over to you, Cheryl.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Without further ado, we'll just wait for the slides to go up. And as you've seen before in the montage, the soft launch of the National Marine Litter Policy and Action Plan 2021 to 2030. And I have the pleasure to introduce you a little bit more details as to what is entailed in this policy document. Before that, I would also like to thank the organizers for this opportunity. And for those that are not familiar with MIMA, or the Maritime Institute of Malaysia, we are actually a government policy research institute, and we've worked very closely with the focal Ministry of Environment and Water, as well as all related stakeholders, communities, and other entities to come up with this National Marine Litter Policy and Action Plan. Next, please. So I think I will be preaching to the converted if I have to mention this again, but unfortunately, we've seen that this is such a crucial issue in this region, especially with some of the Asian countries identified to be among the most polluting countries in the world, unfortunately. And the data and the statistics has revealed Malaysia to be among the top 10, where we stood at number 8, and it's definitely something that we're not proud of. With that in mind, we've taken numerous actions, numerous strategies, numerous discussions, stakeholder consultations, and we felt that there is definitely a need for a national document to try to streamline or guide the national actions to address marine plastic debris and marine debris in general. We also like to thank the Sea Circular Project, COPSI, UNEP, and the funding countries who has made this effort feasible. So you'll see here, next please. Yes, that's where you see Malaysia, unfortunately, among one of the top identified ASEAN countries to be recognized as those that are with high pollution levels. And this policy document and action plan is directed towards addressing this issue as such. Next, please. Now, basically, I think in the opening session, it has been elaborated in quite detail that most of the sources, the pathways of marine plastic pollution or marine litter in general comes mainly from the land-based sources, unfortunately about 80% to 85%. And out of these composition, most of the debris that has been collected, it's actually plastic debris. In some places, from what we've seen, it's between 60 to 85% of total plastic that we've collected in the coastal areas, and the sea, and so on. But nevertheless, having mentioned land-based sources, we cannot run away also from recognizing pollutants from the sea-based sources, which includes fishing industry, the shipping industry, the ports, and so on. So this document includes the land-based sources as well as the sea-based sources of pollutants to make sure that a collective and comprehensive action is formed at the national level and executed by the government entities in cooperation with the industry players and the civil society. Next, please. Now, these are just some pictures taken, and unfortunately, it's really sad to say this, but these pictures are from Malaysia, taken from a various diverse sources. You can see that there has been plastic litter found in on the coastal areas. There has been plastic litter, marine debris found along the rivers. It is also found in the coral reef areas, unfortunately. Fishing nets or goose fishing has been identified as one of the biggest challenges that we're facing. And indirectly or directly, the effects are seen in the marine animals or marine mammals, the turtles and so on, which is definitely not something that we would want to see in the short time or the near time to come. So hence, we've identified the sources, the pathways, as well as the actions that would have to be taken to address the issue. Next, please. Now, we've heard in detail also the statements and the aspirations from the regional platforms to derive this national document. And I'm also happy to note that one of the earlier speakers did mention that the national platform is crucial to ensure that whatever is decided or discussed and adopted at the regional platform or the international platforms are implemented effectively. And hence what we've done is we've kept the national document very much in line, adopted and made into a national document where we can actually implement the actions to address the issue. So some of the major documents or the major regional platforms that we've really used as a guiding framework would include the Bangkok Declaration, which was also mentioned earlier, the ASEAN Regional Plan of Action, what are the aspirations and how can we, Malaysia, try to fulfill or achieve some of the aspirations that has been mentioned by ASEAN, as well as COPSI, our very close partner in this initiative, where we've very much looked into the Regional Action Plan on Marine Litter 2019 and onwards to guide actions on marine litter at the national level. So we'll be able to implement this and then report back to the international community as well as the regional platforms to say what we have achieved, hopefully by the end of this document 2030. Next, please. Now, I think, again, this is something that has been mentioned before. We have to try to acknowledge the drivers and the causes and then come up with the strategies to address these drivers and causes. And we've identified Malaysia to be very much in line with what is some of the issues in the region. For instance, the generation of waste itself. And I believe it was also mentioned earlier, COVID-19 pandemic has made it even more crucial that we look into single-use plastics and so on. But at the same time, there are also issues with mismanagement of this plastic that has been produced and the movement then into the rivers and which then ends up in the sea, in the coastal areas and in the seas. Some of the drivers of plastic pollution, again, in addition to the pandemic, has been the economic development. Is something that we all have been using, and it's quite difficult to just change it to another material, but this is definitely something that we need to look into. Population growth, especially in coastal areas, we've got some coastlines that is heavily populated and unfortunately without proper waste management systems. Urbanization and lack of necessary infrastructure and services in some areas. Human behavior is something that we cannot run away. The awareness and the education component is hence crucial to address this element. The lack of capacity in some areas, for instance, in technological development and adoption and so on, is also among the areas that has been identified. And financing, I think to a certain extent, we've benefited through the regional program and now moving on towards national implementation with concerted or commitment that we see today, in fact, through the involvement of the agencies, ministries, and all the stakeholders. Next, please. Now, I'll just quickly mention, I think this was already highlighted in the video show earlier. The document basically emphasizes on SoS2C framework for marine litter prevention and mitigation. It highlights the priority areas and actions through 6 desired national outcomes. We would want to achieve these outcomes by implementing this action plan. There are 17 identified actions, major actions, which has then been broken into about 103 key activities that has been intensively discussed with all the stakeholders. And these are placed under 5 priority pillars, which I will also be sharing with you. Now, the whole aim of this document is to provide or to strengthen the evidence base for informed decision-making on addressing the issue and to deploy practical actions in phases. In phases, because you can already see the document is dated from 2021 to 2030. Next, please. Now, the purpose and the objectives, again, there are a number of purpose and objectives that has been identified from not having a specific policy or legal system or framework and so on, to actually now having a concerted national document to drive the action on addressing marine litter or marine plastic pollution. It involves a couple of specific areas, and I'll just quickly mention a few perhaps, is to document concrete steps ahead for Malaysia to tackle this issue, is to address the issue through a robust policy that we now have, to coordinate efforts at every level of the federal, state government, public, private, and social sectors, to foster research and innovation to tackle the problem, and also to look into deploying, implementing cutting-edge technologies and innovation to address this. Strengthen institutional and legal framework. We're already looking into those aspects as well. and to promote sharing of best practices and many other things. Next, please. Now, we are also guided very closely to several principles that we have identified. Now, if you can just look at those highlighted in red here, is to enhance implementation of related conventions and agreements, because we do believe that the issue has been there and it has been tackled in bits and pieces through different mechanisms over the years. And what we really need to look at now is to strengthen those and try to implement those gaps or address those gaps where marine plastic pollution or marine litter is specifically mentioned. So we're going to look into enhancing those, reducing the loading of this marine plastic pollution from sea-based as well as land-based sources, demonstrate good practices or best practices in this case, as well as experiences from the stakeholders to improve integrated river basin and coastal area management and so on. We also want to try to look into, with assistance from the NGOs and our close partners, to look into behavioral change, transformation or modification of human behavior to try to adopt more environmentally friendly approaches to addressing this issue, as well as robust and innovative solutions through technologies, processes, and systems along the plastic value chain, and then to have all these reassessed, where we mentioned impact assessment, to look into what we would derive from this action and try to implement our best practices and revise accordingly. So we are serious about trying to address this issue over the next several years. Next, please. Now, the 5 pillars that was mentioned earlier is basically this. Pillar 1, policy adoption and implementation. It's definitely the base of implementation of this document. And then we'll move to Pillar 2, deployment of technologies, innovation, and capacity building. Pillar 3 is to improve monitoring and data collection. 4 is specifically on awareness and outreach. Pillar 5, and I think it was very specifically mentioned by the ambassador earlier, is to adopt a whole of nation and multi-stakeholders approach in harmonizing cross-cutting objectives. Now, these 5 pillars has been specifically further broke down into specific actions. For instance, Pillar 3 has got 3 actions underneath it and activities that will drive those actions to make sure that we achieve these 5 pillars. Next, please. Now, these are the expected outcome. I'm sorry if this is a little too, this is small for you to read, but this is what I mentioned earlier, the 6 expected outcomes. By implementing this national document, we hope that this will strengthen national planning, regional coherence in terms of addressing the issue. We hope to deploy solutions to based on latest technologies and standards to address marine plastic pollution, identify national indicators to address the issue, because we always say reduce plastics and it's normally based on how much you collect, how much is disposed and so on. So we would want to look further into indicators as well to benchmark our successes, and I believe this is definitely also in line with international discussion at the moment. Demonstrate effectiveness of our action plan, and to look into year-on-year increase in local knowledge hubs and so on, dissemination of information based on these strategies and actions that we have, and broaden engagement across the many stakeholders groups that are involved in this at the national level. Next, please. Now, this is the short-term period I mentioned to you earlier, these 17 actions broken down further to 103 actions at the moment we've got, based on discussion with all the stakeholders at the national level who has agreed to these actions, in fact, added on to the base that we had earlier. So the short-term period is going to be over the next 2 years or so, 2021 to 2030. The medium term would be from 2024 to 2027, and then the longer term period would be 28 to 2030. And in between, we will be revising the implementation. Next, please. Now, it is a huge document in terms of the actions, the discussions, and so on. But what I've included here is for your understanding in terms of some of the actions that has been listed. For instance, in 2021 to 23, immediate actions that we can derive at the national level and implement right away are those that are listed in 2021 to 23. Those that would need a little more time to make sure that it is effectively adopted or implemented at the national level is given into the middle 24 to 27 midterm, and 28 to 2030 is basically to try to look into bigger aspirations and also to review the document to make sure that we achieve what we intend to and try to address gaps if we have something left out from this document. Next, please. Now, what's next? Now that we've got this document, it will be officially adopted this year. And the immediate next step over the long, many months of discussions, many months of engagement with the stakeholders, ministries and so on, we hope that the next step is definitely going to be engaging with all of you at the national level as well as at the regional and international level in making sure that the respective role, the function of the document, the entities that's supposed to be participating in the implementation and monitoring are all well informed and playing their part. And some of the areas that we feel most of the crucial elements is already included in the document, but nevertheless, some of the crucial next steps would have to involve Malaysia looking into information and analytical capacity on this issue, because we believe that there are still gaps, especially in terms of national baseline data and so on. Material science, looking into materials, new components that could actually replace plastic and are less damaging to the environment. Looking at toxicology health assessment, where what exactly are we talking in terms of marine plastic pollution and ensuring healthy ecosystems, healthy oceans, and so on, as well as the socioeconomics element, where we talk about market-based instruments, circular economy, and so on. And technologies is something that we definitely cannot run away from. We need to look into technologies where we can try to address marine litter pollution or marine plastic pollution in Malaysia and elsewhere. So that will be definitely the next crucial steps that we'll be looking into. Next, please. With that, on behalf of the focal ministry, Ministry of Environment and Water, as well as MIMA and all the stakeholders involved, thank you very much for your kind attention. Back to you, Ms. Aisha.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cheryl, for that presentation and all of that information. You know, that's the type of information that you see it, you hear it, you know what it is, what the problems are. But then, you know, when you see the numbers, it can be quite eye-opening. Anyway, we've come to the final segment of this session, which is a panel discussion on tackling marine plastic pollution from policy to practical solutions. We'll be joined once more by Ms. Cheryl Kaur, and she will be moderating this. And she's got with her 4 distinguished panelists. So, Ms. Cheryl, I will be this time round sitting in and watching you. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aisha, once again. And ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, guests, we will now move on to a very important session, I must say, crucial to hear from a few more presentations. We have with us today 4 panelists, which I will be happy to introduce to you. But before that, ladies and gentlemen, can I also interest you to type in your questions for this panel session in the comment section, and we will be taking those questions up at the end of this session. Now, without further ado, I would just briefly introduce you. The theme of this panel discussion is going to be tackling marine plastic pollution from policy to practical solutions. And I think it flows well with the earlier national presentation, and now we've got all the panelists from the regional platforms as well as the ministry to look into national or talk about national and regional actions, broader action suggestions, as well as future plans to enhance cooperation and synergies on tackling this very topical area, marine litter pollution. Without further ado, can I now quickly introduce to you the first panelist, who will be given 5 minutes to provide some insights. Mr. Mahesh Pradhan, I think we're not alien to him. He is he has been with the United Nations Environment Program for a very long time, and I don't think I will read your CV says a lot about your experiences, vast experiences in the area. Mr. Mahesh is currently the interim COP-C coordinator, United Nations Environment Program. Mr. Mahesh, delighted to have you, and I pass the floor to you 5 minutes to hear your insights on the theme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. And I must at the outset congratulate the government of Malaysia on this very impressive new National Marine Litter Policy and Action Plan, 2021 to 2030. If I look and I heard, Cheryl, from your presentation, the 2 core themes, the 5 pillars, the 6 principles, the 103 actions, and I think it's really well placed to guide Malaysia in moving and addressing to this challenge of marine litter. Also to the government of Malaysia for co-hosting the Sea of Solutions event, which is jointly organized between the Sea Circular Project and COP-C, as well as thank the government of Sweden for supporting this project. I think Malaysia is an integral component and partner of COP-C. COP-C is part of 18 regional seas conventions and action plans, and the regional seas have been going on for quite a while now, nearly 47 years, covering 146 countries all across the globe, and focusing, of course, on SDG 14. So it provides that broad framework. But COP-C itself has been active since 1994, a little over 25 years. And it is here that we have a regional marine litter action plan, or what we call as RAP Mali, adopted by the 24th Intergovernmental Meeting of COP-C. Earlier this year, in September, we had another 2 years biennial program of the RAP Mali endorsed by the COP-C participating countries. And this is where we're looking at 4 key components under RAP Mali. First is the land-based sources of marine litter. Second, and as was highlighted, and to also put more emphasis, is on the sea-based sources. Third is on the monitoring and assessment. And fourth is creating these enabling conditions. So with RAP Mali, and we've heard from His Excellency the ASEAN Secretary General, we have the ASEAN Regional Action Plan. So there's lots of synergies between our efforts. And this is where I think moving towards a circular economy is key. It is also quite an exciting time, as was mentioned by Susan in the opening, in terms of we moving towards the UNIA 5.2, UNIA being the United Nations Environment Assembly, and the second part in February 2022, where there have been draft resolutions already presented by the governments of Peru and Rwanda for a legally binding agreement on marine litter and plastics. So this is currently in discussion, and hopefully when we move closer to UNIA 5.2, we can connect. And it is here is to be very important of connecting local efforts to global. And here the National Marine Litter Policy and Action Plan of Malaysia being connected to this global agreement, I think will provide a lot of inputs, impetus, support to move the agenda forward. We're just back from the climate change COP26, and with the limited success there, we now look forward towards plastics and another big agenda. And I'm sure that with efforts such as this very important soft launch of this action plan. Back to you, Cheryl.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahesh. Very pertinent pointers you've highlighted over there. And we hope we believe and we hope sincerely that this will definitely be a step forward to further engage with the other ASEAN countries, perhaps in this region, as well as the other regional platforms and international platforms, where we can not only showcase our document, but also at the same time learn and share experiences between one another on this very, very important area where so much is being done at the moment. Thank you once again, Mr. Mahesh. With that, we'll move to the second panelist now. I am happy to introduce to you Dr. Wong Sok, who is currently the head of the Environment Division, ASEAN Director of the Sustainable Development Directorate, ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community Department of the ASEAN Secretariat. Dr. Wong Sok has over 20 years global environmental compliance and governance experience, including in-depth knowledge of strategic environmental planning, environmental diplomacy, and operations control of environmental management systems. Very apt and pertinent for this session. Dr. Wong, I pass the floor to you. 5 minutes remarks from you on the theme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarir. I think this is a very a great juncture that Malaysia have come up with this particular Malaysia National Marine Litter Policy and Action 2021-2030 launch. This is very important indeed, and from ASEAN Secretariat side, I think like the remark from the Secretary General of ASEAN highlight and express our deep saying to Malaysia government that made this important policy document to guide Malaysia action for combating marine litter. So with that, I would like to also appreciate the government of Malaysia, in particular Ministry of Environment and Water, the United Nations Environment Program, and COPSI that join hand together to make this accelerating solution to reduce plastic debris. I think the presentation from Cheryl is quite good, that a lot of good stuff that Malaysia have identified the real issue, the real key player, the real sort of key approach, collaborative approach, work with multi sort of stakeholder and public, and also have identified some of the financial, technical, and human resource, and including also the monitoring of the marine litter. This all it's a very comprehensive, I may say, and ASEAN Secretariat really see this a very important a big step forward for our region. I think I would like to share 3 important points to maybe to contribute to this launch. Hope that this may contribute to accelerating our practical solution. First of all, I just would like to highlight that the from policy to practice, I think the design of the policy is really important step to reflect. I think a right issue identify, a right solution to address the issue and or the need of the society. This one of the things I would like to highlight specifically: consistent policy across the board. It's one most important element to take into account. I think consistent policy across the board here, what do I mean? It's about the regional, national, local, and city where we have shared the same sort of view and sort of strategy in order to achieve our target. So right now we have a regional sort of initiative, as you already see from the presentation of Sherry. I think we have a number more of the key document. I mean, ASEAN Leader Declaration on Blue Economy, the Circular Economy Framework for Economic Sector, ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. I mean, some element there. On top of that, the Bangkok Declaration is really specific on combating marine debris in ASEAN region. And the ASEAN Regional Action Plan, that is the document guide us that include also policy support, planning, research, innovation, capacity building, and also the CIPA, public awareness, education and outreach, and the private sector engagement. So I think we all are consistent with that regional, and national provide some of the consistent in terms of key strategy key direction. So that is one of the good things. But we may need to look at how we can harmonize also at the local and the city level. So the consistency is really important across the board. I mean, at the local and the city may need to also reflect in the way of how we can engage and make them more responsible for that sort of plastic or marine litter. And with that, I think the harmonization in terms of resource usage, this may be upon the consistent and coordination. The harmonization of resource usage is one of the most important rather than compete. And I think this is the way we can provide consistent and harmonization. Consistent here is not mean only in environment sector, but also across the sector as well. I mean, in terms of upstream and downstream, look at the producer and look at the end user and how we can harmonize that and provide a sort of consistent policy. So that's the first point I would like to make. The second point I think I would like to share, it's about practical solution. I mean, in order to make the policy to practice more effectively, I think the practical solution may need to identify. It's not only the cost effective, but also user friendly, local made sort of solution and approach or community practice that need to be promoted. That include also maybe the bottom-up approach, that the way it need to be in hand. I mean, collect sort of best practice from the community and local practice or the way forward. And this is the way we can inject some of the key advanced cutting-edge technology that may help to accelerate our action and alignment with the national and regional. The third point I would like to make is about the continuous improvement and adaptive learning of policy and practice. Because as you may have noted, I mean, the policy after produced, I mean, it's takes some time to implement it, and then just start to implement the issue. It's create more and more and multi-dimension and also become more difficult. So what I mean here is about the policy a bit slow in response to the issue. So how we can do this with the continuous improvement of the policy and adaptive learning from policy and practice, that should be captured and allow quick update, revise policy to respond or provide a complement sort of policy or action or guidance to respond to the need and challenge of society for effective and efficiency of the implementation. With that, I think we have a good element there, and ASEAN Secretariat will be with the Malaysian government and Ministry of Environment, Water Resource, and we will try to do more in terms of coordination with all the key players, including the partner and the private sector, to promote sort of a better solution, accelerate our action, and provide sort of exchange information and best practice. And if possible, we would like also to make the best practice, best technologies available to the region where we can facilitate more and get more sort of involved, including the expert and so on. So I end my point here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Wong, for the very clear pointers that you have provided, and I think very much crucial and in line with what we are thinking as well. You mentioned 3 points, main points. One is to ensure consistent policy is adopted across the board, which should also include across the national entities, agencies, and so on, as well as the resource usage. You also called for practical solutions which are user-friendly, and that is definitely something that we have tried our best to also keep in line for Malaysia in this case. And you have emphasized also on the need to continuously learn and adapt from the implementation, which is another crucial element that countries should definitely consider when trying to formulate and implement national actions on addressing the issue. So with that, thank you very much, Dr. Wong, once again. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll just take this opportunity to once again call upon your questions, which you can type into the comments section based on the presentations that we've already heard from COPSI and also ASEAN representatives. We now move on to the third panelist for this session. I am happy to introduce you to Miss Dr. Anjali Acharya, who is a senior environmental specialist in World Bank's East Asia and Pacific region. She's currently based in Singapore, but she has backing her numerous experiences working with different countries over the years. And briefly, over her last 20 years at the World Bank, she has indeed worked on the range of environmental issues, which include pollution, climate change, water resources, environmental health, biodiversity, and environmental policies. So with that, Dr. Anjali, I pass the floor to you for your remarks on the theme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Just want to check you can hear me. Okay. Yes, okay. Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be here, and right out, I would like to congratulate Malaysia and CASA for the soft launch of their Marine Litter Action Plan. We're very happy to see this, and we are also pleased that we have been able to support Malaysia in their efforts on tackling marine debris. Furthermore, we very much see Malaysia as one of the regional leaders as well as a global leader to demonstrate how it can be done. Now, the previous speakers have elaborated a lot on the different ways that they're helping. So let me add to that while building on what they have previously said. So the World Bank Group has been working in the space of marine plastics for the last 4 or 5 years, but of course it builds on a 20-year engagement on solid waste management issues, which of course is a bulk of the marine plastics that gets leaked into river systems, etc. Over the last few years, we have raised something like $15 million in trust funds that are building the evidence base, so doing analytical work, including in Malaysia, but across the region, everything from metrics that look at top 10 plastics, something that Cheryl showed in her slides, to looking at different types of technologies. The second block is working on policy elements. So this is really very much focused on policies relating to phasing out single-use plastics, looking at extended producer responsibility, and supporting numerous countries in the region on their marine action plans or their plastics roadmaps. In Malaysia in particular, we were happy to have provided a good amount of support in their thinking towards the sustainability roadmap that is underpinning circular economy. And finally, we've also been working in the space of investments. As you know, as a multilateral development bank, we are working strongly with a lot of different sectors. So everything from solid waste management to tourism to agriculture to coastal resilience and fisheries. These are all projects that have the opportunity for building in activities that will support combating marine plastics. Now, it's important to note that our approach, very much as Dr. Wongsok said, focuses all along the plastic value chain. So it's everything from the upstream work, how do we reduce the amount of plastics that enter the stream in the first place by looking at alternatives, alternative materials, etc. It is the midstream, which is a lot of the plastic circularity, which also includes very much recycling and reuse. What are the models? What are the types of products that are better designed for recycling? And then all the way downstream in terms of cleanup. And of course, the further downstream you go, the more difficult it gets, but that is also a part of it. I really liked what Dr. Wongsok said about consistent policies, practical solutions, and adaptive learning. So let me just build on that because I think it will help to deepen the discussion on this. So consistent policy. One of the things that we have worked on regionally, which has been referenced before, has been the ASEAN Regional Action Plan. We were very pleased to have led the exercise along with the ASEAN Secretariat and Thailand as the chair of ASEAN. in 2020 to prepare the ASEAN Regional Action Plan. And the underpinning of that has really been on the types of regional policies that need to be harmonized across the ASEAN member states. And these regional policies are everything from looking at resources to carry out EPR, looking at pathways to phase out single-use plastics, etc. Also looking specifically at recycled waste standards and things like recycled at plastic waste trade. So this is really meant to be connecting so that you can have harmonization at the regional level, but Dr. Wong Sok also said very importantly how it connects to the national level and the local level. And this is the interface that the World Bank is working on through our engagement in each and every country in the region. Practical solutions, we cannot emphasize this more because you have a lot of innovation that's coming out all across the world. How do we make it practical to the country context? So something that works in the Netherlands or in Germany or in the US may not necessarily work in the cities and the countries in this region. And so looking at practical solutions is really critical. And adaptive learning, again, a very, very important area of knowledge exchange, and we're building regional platforms for knowledge and innovation. I just want to end with one final point. At the regional level, as I mentioned, we have been working on the Regional Action Plan, which identifies 14 regional actions that all the countries of the ASEAN collectively have endorsed, including Malaysia. Now, one of the things is, how will these actions be paid for? What we are doing is we're in the process of working very closely with Dr. Wong Sok and the ASEAN Secretariat, as well as the ASEAN member states, to develop a new program called CMAP, a project that will bring grant financing to do two things. One is to be able to develop these regional actions, and we hope to do so in collaboration with many of the partners, development partners who are working across the region who bring in their comparative advantage. And the second is to build the possibility of innovation grants. When His Excellency Dato Lim Jock Hoi had spoken in his opening remarks, he very much talked about things like private sector innovation, grants for innovation. This is really where we think is the ability to be able to unlock markets. How do we bring those innovation? What can one innovation in Cambodia provide in terms of examples to Philippines? How can something from Singapore be applied to something in Thailand, etc.? We're also looking at the space of financing to bring in different kinds of instruments that bring public and private sector financing. And this includes issues like plastic credits and looking at blended financing options. And lastly, we're also looking at community-based actions. So these are not actions that are for the big private sector, etc. We hope that they will take the lead and champion on this way to address marine plastics issues, but we're also looking at community-based solutions. So we very much look forward to how Malaysia is progressing in this area, and we look forward to supporting them and other countries in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anjali, for highlighting or emphasizing on some of these crucial areas in relation to addressing or tackling this issue. Particularly, I think it's very interesting to see some of the pointers that you have mentioned, which we have also extensively discussed over time, which includes the need for data, the need for information. And World Bank has been very instrumental in assisting Malaysia, for instance, in this case, as well on that aspect, including the plastic sustainability roadmap. You also mentioned the policies, work on policies and EPR and circular economy. But for one of the major point that you have also brought up in your perspective includes the financial or the investments component, which is definitely something that I think is still very much, there is a gap that we need to look into. And I'm happy to hear that there are already efforts taken between ASEAN platform and the World Bank to try to look into some of these requirements. Community-based actions, again, is very, very crucial. Sometimes we tend to look so much into the higher level policies and implementation. We tend to sometimes forget about the communities and the role that they can play for more concerted or effective outcomes. So that's definitely one other area that we need to take note of. With that, thank you again, Dr. Anjali. And we'll now move to the fourth panelist, who I'm actually very glad to introduce again. We've worked very closely with the Ministry of Environment and Water, and we have with us the Under Secretary of the Environmental Management Division, Mr. Jamalulail Abu Bakar, who will be sharing his thoughts on the theme, tackling marine plastic pollution from policy to practical solutions. With that, Mr. Jamal, I pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Cheryl, and distinguished panelists. It is an honor for me to be given the opportunity to share Malaysia's insights and efforts in tackling marine plastic pollution. And our topic of discussion today befits the challenge that we are facing as plastic and marine plastic pollution are widespread and becoming critical. And I would like to also acknowledge and thank the support, assistance, and efforts that have been carried out in the region by COPSI, ASEAN Secretariat, and also the World Bank in assisting Malaysia in coming out with the document. I believe that efforts and aspirations are culminating and many actions are being taken on the ground. And the discussion at global level is also leaning towards development of new global plastic agreement, which shows the seriousness of the issue. The regional bodies, we hope that could continue assisting countries in the following area to act as a platform for sharing of knowledge and technical. Sorry, we're having some technical issue. I believe that the efforts and aspiration are culminating and many actions are being taken on the ground. And we hope that the regional bodies could assist us, continue assisting the countries in the following area as a platform for sharing of knowledge and technical know-how, provide assistance to countries in monitoring of marine litter and in harmonizing methodologies to assess marine litter, provide support to countries in assessing readiness towards a global plastic framework, as well as facilitating networking. So on the Malaysia's perspective, at the ministry level, we have introduced the roadmap to a zero single-use plastic 2018-2030 as a way to deter the use of single-use plastic in Malaysia. Towards zero single-use plastic roadmap was launched in 2018, aiming towards zero single-use plastic for a cleaner and healthier environment in Malaysia by 2030. The motivation for this roadmap's formulation are the severity of plastic pollution in Malaysia, low recycling rates of plastic waste, the absence of uniform policy framework, the absence of environmentally friendly and cost-effective alternative, and illegal plastic waste entering the country. This roadmap served as a policy direction in addressing single-use plastic pollution in Malaysia through a holistic approach and collaborative efforts from all stakeholders. One of the mechanisms put in place is a polluter pay principle, whereby a charge is imposed for plastic shopping bag as deterrent mechanism. So as we know that today is the soft launch of the National Marine Litter Policy and Action Plan 2021-2030, we hope that it paves the way forward for Malaysia to move from planning towards implementation. And as has been mentioned by Cheryl, a lot of activities are planned in the pipeline. So the key to mobilize activities and ensuring on the ground measure will be through interagency collaborations, since this issue is bound to states and local authority that manage the handling of waste. To support these two roadmap and policy and action plan, we're also going to introduce Plastic Sustainability Roadmap 2021-2030 will be implemented alongside with those two roadmaps and action plan. And this roadmap will focus on circularity of plastic material and life cycle approach to ensure circularity and sustainability. This will be done through extended producer responsibility, and currently EPR will be done in a voluntary basis, but will be made mandatory by 2026, where a governance, what we need is implementation, focusing on how we can get bear fruit or low-hanging fruits, which can result in tangible, measurable impacts. However, at the same time, we must also address the issue through a wider perspective, through the use of technologies, market-based instruments, and the likes. This would take time, but we needed to supplement the conventional way of managing marine plastic pollution, although these two need to be intensified to make a difference. Key actions that we have identified are addressing leakages, which 80% of the marine plastic pollution comes from land-based. Thus, there is a need for us to improve solid waste management, and it is timely for the intervention to be done. Second one, to increase recycling, circularity of plastic materials. Now in Malaysia, the current plastic recycling rate is only 24% and of 4 types of resin, which is PET, PP, LDPE, and HDPE, and this can be further enhanced in the future. On the multi-pronged approaches, it's also needed to effectively tackle the plastic pollution, and to address this issue through technology and innovation. Technology is identifying pathways on leakages, technologies to capture marine debris, and innovation in coming up with alternative to plastic packaging and innovation circularities. Now, this is the biggest challenge that we are identifying, which is advocate change of lifestyle and increase awareness. We hope that we can change the lifestyle of Malaysian in general to help us to assist in making sure that the leakage of marine pollution to the is happening. And we also acknowledge the lack of data and monitoring, and we hope that scientific data can be further enhanced to be gathered and to guide actions and decision making. And the last one is on market-based instrument, which is both as deterrent and avoidable plastic use or incentivize on recycling and innovation. So that is what we're having in Malaysia nationally. We hope that it can be achieved based on the plan that been highlighted in the policy and the action plan. So thank you very much, Cheryl. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jamal. Indeed, I would echo Mr. Jamal to say that I believe Malaysia has come a long way in terms of at least setting a guidance to move forward to addressing this issue holistically, from the time we were identified to be among the top polluters to the first document that was released by the ministry on zero single-use plastic roadmap 2018. And now we've got this national policy and action plan ready to be adopted and implemented. I also believe it's a crucial element again, and it's something that we have to definitely try to look into further details where we need to implement this. We've got the strategies, we've got the plan, we've got the actions all laid. Now we need to implement and look at the outcomes and effectiveness. So I would definitely agree with you, Mr. Jamal. Thank you once again. With that, we've got a couple of minutes for questions. There are a couple of questions that I'm seeing in the comment section. If we can just bring all the panelists on screen now, and we'll try to take at least one or two. Now, there is a question on, I would just try to summarize it in the interest of time. I believe some of the participants are asking about polluters pay principle. What is our thoughts on trying to enforce that? Because there was a question on trying to come up with, enforcing tax on plastic and so on. So I think it's very much relates to polluters pay principle. And some of the efforts that we're seeing at the moment is very much voluntary. It's very much driven by governments and so on. So if you can just perhaps take, any of the panelists would want to try to take this up.
Sure, this is Anjali. I'm happy to get started. So the question was, someone has asked, why can't we introduce an ASEAN-wide tax on plastic? It's not that simple to just put, tax that covers all countries, all types. So we need to drill it down to the possible different options. So we have different kinds of economic instruments. Some of them are, taxes. Some of them are bans. Some of them are phasing out, etc. We also need to look at the distributional impacts of any economic instrument, including taxes. So, who will it impact? Would it be imposed on the producer of the plastic products? Would it be imposed on the consumers? We have a lot of low-income communities that exist, and they really use a lot of single-use plastics for obvious reasons. And so, how do we get about bringing this all together? Then you have also issues of different kinds of plastic products. So this is something that needs to be thought through. We have, I'm sure, representatives from many consortia and organizations that deal with the informal sector. So this is all concerns in terms of livelihoods of people and who it would impact. We are currently starting to do a distributional impact work in the Philippines to look at the options that are being proposed for a tax. These are the kinds of things to think through. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anjali, for taking that. I see a couple of questions more, but if I can just now perhaps pose to the panelists. We're talking about impacts, which has also been briefly mentioned earlier. Impacts. How do we try to look into the impacts on the local people in terms of the policies and the actions that we're taking? How do we make sure? Because in one of the perspective, it was mentioned that we need to try to look into community-based actions and making sure that the policies or the actions that we're making at the ASEAN level, COPSI, Mali, World Bank initiatives, perhaps all of you can try to take a couple of minutes to answer this. How do we make sure that it actually reaches the people? Maybe we can start off with Mr. Mahesh, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Cheryl. I think in terms of reaching out to the local engagement, data and information is key in terms of enabling them. And this is where we are working on a harmonized monitoring methodology for the COPSI countries. Perhaps this is where, in terms of getting communities aware of the amount, and we heard the statistics as to what is out there and them being better prepared to respond. The issue of closing the tap, by phasing out unnecessary, avoidable plastics, and then replacing them with alternative materials, products, etc., services, I think is also key in terms of the local community. One of the things that is haunting us is this legacy plastic, where we have this huge amounts, and this is where I think effective monitoring, identifying sources, quantities, etc., will help. But overall, maybe strengthening governance at all levels, including the local level, will help local communities. Thank you. Over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mahesh. We'll just take maybe 1 minute each because we're almost at the end of the time here. Dr. Wong, if you can just quickly sum up in how ASEAN could play a role to making sure that the communities benefit from all these actions, all these initiatives on addressing this issue. Please, just perhaps 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I think one of the most important about the prioritization and approach to work with the community. I mean, the meaningful engagement of the community is very important. Value their time, their contribution. I mean, the way we have to consider upfront rather than just develop policy and then ask them to implement, and that's become a big burden for them. I think this is the way. I think the prioritization and engagement with the community, which is not really to drop the work for them, but the way how to provide them benefit in terms of incentive. Where is the incentive? There's no incentive, ask them to work more, that become more problem. And then look from the adaptive approach, what do they have from their daily practice? And then this the way can, provide a meaningful engagement. It's not really a big burden to them, but also create some kind of incentive for them as well. I end my point here. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Wong Sok. Mr. Jamal, I must pass you the floor as well for 1 minute just to highlight what's coming next. What do we expect for Malaysia? 1 minute, please.
Thank you, Cheryl. We believe that the whole of nation approach is the only way forward for us to really achieve this ambitious objective that has been set by the government. But I believe also with the commitment and the assistance from the government agencies, NGOs, and community at large, will also help us in ensuring this will be achieved in due course. And we hope that EPR can be implemented fully in 2026 to also get the support from the industry in supporting in reducing the plastic pollution litter in Malaysia. So cross fingers, we hope that the policy can be the guidance and we will learn from there on how to make it better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jamal. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of this session. I believe there's so much more to talk about, but we don't have that much time. But we've actually tried to at least address some of the major questions. And we hope that the communications will go on from here. Once again, on behalf of the organizers, thank you, Mr. Mahesh, on behalf of from COPSI. Thank you, Dr. Wong from ASEAN Secretariat, Dr. Anjali World Bank, and Mr. Jamal from CASA. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I pass the floor back to Aisha. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, and to your distinguished panelists for that educational session. Now, distinguished speakers and delegates, we have now reached the end of the Sea of Solutions 2021 opening session. We hope that you will take advantage of the opportunities to learn the latest trends and innovations, as well as partnerships to advance and scale solutions to reduce plastic waste. So tell us more about your commitments by making a pledge through the link that you will find on the reception page of the platform. And do remember to come back later for session 1, a new wave of eco-friendly consumer society, which will take place at 1 p.m. Indochina time or 2 p.m. Malaysia time. After which we've got session 2 on innovations in sustainable packaging value chain. It will be held at 3 p.m. Indochina time or 4 p.m. Malaysia time. We wish you a fruitful 3 days ahead. Thank you very much and see you then.